What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the BizDad Podcast. I am, as always, your host, Adam Labar, and this is the show where we interview amazing dads who are entrepreneurs. Today, I am looking forward to having a conversation with Alex Pardo. Alex, if you can, please go ahead and introduce yourself, tell us about your family, and tell us about your business.
Yeah, Adam, thank you, man. I'm excited for our conversation. I look forward to being on the podcast here. But 45 years old, born and raised in Miami. My wife and I have been married for 12 years, and we have two beautiful, healthy girls, Ariana and Alessia, ages 10 and 8. And look, I've been in business since 2005, and it's ironic, man, because when I graduated from FIU, I started working at General Electric in their financial management program. And I'm not good at a whole lot of things, but I'm good at a few. And one of those is like reverse engineering, like what I want the design of my life to look like. And faith and family have always been the bedrock. Like that is what is most important in my life. And so I quickly realized working for somebody else wasn't really for me. So went backpacking around Europe, got into real estate late 2005 and started going about the business of designing it so that it could give me more time with my family so we could travel and impact other people. And so that is, I kind of share that, and that's probably the most modified, brief version of an intro that I've given. But I share that because that's what's most important to me. It's faith, family, and then business and money, and everything else follows after. But faith, family, and health are at the top of the pillar there.
Welcome to the BizDad Podcast, where we dive into the melding of fathership and entrepreneurship with your host, the original BizDad himself, Adam Labar. Adam is a Christian, a former Air Force officer, a dad to 3 amazing kids, a coach, a real estate investor, and a business owner. On this podcast, he'll explore the unique journeys of amazing dads who are striving for greatness in both business and family. So whether you're a dad who is an aspiring entrepreneur, a seasoned business owner, or simply a man striving to be a better dad, get ready as the BizDad brings you conversations to inspire, challenge, and equip you to be a better dad and entrepreneur. And now, here's Adam.
I mean, you mentioned faith and family, and those are things that you thought about in 2005 when you started. But so I'm assuming, and I'm going to, tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm going to assume that you always had a plan to get married, have kids. So you designed it that way before you even got married. What made you, when you got into business, what made you kind of go, hey, I'm going to design this now to prepare myself for that?
Yeah, I tend to be somebody that thinks ahead a lot. And at times, if I'm being very transparent and honest with you, at times I feel like maybe that isn't the best. We always talk about being as present as possible, like in the moment, not necessarily looking back unless you're drawing from previous experiences and then, but planning ahead. And so, yeah, man, I was so fortunate and blessed. And look, I just came back from a missions trip. Literally, I got in last night from Dominican Republic where I visited families that are very poor financially, but are very rich spiritually and relationally. And so that has always, I feel like I've had that perspective because of the values that my parents instilled in me early on. Family, I come from my parents are Cuban. I was born in Miami. My sister was as well, but my entire family is from Cuba. And I think because of what they experienced in a communist country and having to come over in the 60s, being able to make it here, starting from scratch, I think that has transferred well into my sister and I. And so family and that dynamic has always just been very, very important to me. So yeah, 25 years old, even though I hadn't met my wife at that time, I wanted kids, but I didn't know if I was going to be able to have kids. I mean, what's that saying? Like, you make a plan and God laughs. But it was always, that was part of the vision. And that's one thing I learned early on from a mentor is, when you look at somebody's calendar, it's filled with business meetings and all this stuff, but are you intentional about creating time for things outside of business and making money, like faith and family? And so early on from a mentor, I learned the concept of designing a vision for your life and then building the business around that life vision to hopefully support and enhance it.
I absolutely love that and can't agree more. And that's one of the reasons I started the podcast is, I was in the military for a long time, seeing a ton of divorces. You can't design your life around anything. The military tells you what your life is, basically, and I saw all these divorces, all these dads who never saw their kids. Even if they weren't divorced, they still never saw their kids because they were deployed here, deployed there. We're spending a year in Iraq or Afghanistan and bouncing around all over, all these places. And once I started having kids, I was like, I can't do this. This life can't, I was gone all the time. And I was like, I need to design something that makes sense. I started investing in real estate, started doing all of that, and it changed my perspective. I wish that I would have caught it as early as you did. It took until I actually started having kids. Even though I knew I wanted to have kids since I was like 13, I didn't know anything about designing a life. I didn't know anything. I didn't have one of those mentors, which is where I strongly encourage everybody listening to A, have a mentor, and B, be a mentor. Like, tell somebody that's in your place last year what they need to do this year to fix so that they don't end up where you were, right? So that they can improve their life. So not only have a mentor, but be a mentor. So what's going on, everybody? I wanted to jump in and take a second to tell you about the awesome team over at Wise VAs. Oftentimes, as entrepreneurs, we can feel a bit overwhelmed with mundane tasks that eat up our valuable time, and it's time to reclaim that schedule. All right. It's time to stop doing some of those $10 an hour jobs and give them back to an elite group of talent that are there specifically to help you and help you stay in your zone of genius. So delegate those $10 an hour tasks to focus on more $1,000 an hour tasks. Reclaim what matters most in your life, which is your time. Get that amazing team of elite remote talent that is there to help support you and make sure that you are giving back the best to your company. So schedule a free strategy call at getwisevas.com/Adam. That is getwisevas.com/Adam. It is an amazing group, an amazing team. They do an awesome job with everything that they've got going on there. If you have some tasks on the side, whether it's administrative, whether it's editing, whether it's recording, whatever it is, they have got an assistant for you, someone who is going to be able to help you out and take some of those tasks off of your plate. I thank Wise VAs every day for helping me process all of these podcasts, helping me take care of a bunch of stuff in the background. And I definitely would recommend them over to you. So again, getwisevas.com/Adam. All right. Thanks a lot. Back to the show. I want to rewind. You mentioned your family being from Cuba. Your parents, my wife is first generation American, born here in Florida as well, but up on the Tampa side, not down on the Miami side. But her mom immigrated from Cuba, ended up going to Spain first, because that's the only way they could get out was to go to Spain first. They hung out in Spain for a year and then moved here to the States. It's been like an absolute joy of mine to be able to learn from them, to hear their story, to understand where they came from. And kind of realize that's like, man, this is such an amazing gift to live in this country and to have the opportunities we have that people just are ignorant of today. So I'd love to rewind a little bit and understand what it was like for you growing up. How did your parents impact your life in helping you understand what it is that we have here, what it is that faith actually truly means? And I'll just let you kind of take it from there.
Yeah, look, before I answer that question, and I know I shared this with you before we started recording, but a genuine thank you and appreciation for your service. I'm certain, I would think, you probably hear that a lot, and sometimes it might sound like they're just words, but you just mentioned something that I don't know that I've been conscious enough to really have awareness about. It's that I think about people like you that go out there and fight for our country, and an incredible country that we have freedoms. But I don't think about the sacrifices in terms of family and travel and people that have kids. And so, again, man, just thank you for that. But look, my parents, I think my dad was 12 years old. So fortunately for my parents, they weren't one of the ones that had to risk their life by jumping on a raft to cross and try to get over to Florida. They got chosen. And I think it's a God thing. What other way? It's not luck to me. It's God. It's a lottery system. And so they actually got to fly over here, but here's the thing: they were actually supposed to go back, and they never ended up going back, right?
Can't imagine why.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty obvious, right? And so I still have second and third cousins out there that unfortunately weren't that lucky to come over, and obviously now things are a little bit different. But yeah, I remember just early on, Adam, them sharing with me how it was growing up, where they might not have water for an entire week. And if they did get water, it was going to be for like half an hour a day. And they've shared stories with me of showering with literally a cup when for the little window that they have water for that day. Being assigned a certain amount of crackers or a certain amount of a tiny little piece of protein. And I think early on, it started to give me some perspective about the fact that, hey, I'm not growing up here like my parents. Now, my parents, I'm the first entrepreneur in my family. I grew up very middle class, so I don't have a rags to riches story. I certainly wasn't wealthy, but I certainly wasn't living on a dirt floor in a shack either. So just I have an immense amount of gratitude to my family for not just sharing with me their story, providing for my sister and I the way they did with the means that they had, but also putting me in a Baptist school, eventually then a Catholic school, but me strengthening my faith and them making that a priority, even though my parents don't consider themselves religious, pretty inconsistent when it comes to going to church and that type of thing. But I've always had a relationship with God from early on, and I think that's because of their influence.
Very good. Yeah, it's I wish, looking back, I would have known more about, it's not just let me go to church on Sunday, let me go to church on Wednesday, mom's bringing me, here we go. And would have, but of course, when you're young, you know everything anyways, right? So I didn't piece that together until much later in life. And seeing some more of the atrocities in the world to go, oh no, there probably really is a God here, right? Like there's something else going on here. Not that I ever didn't believe, it was just one of those cursory type of beliefs. Than it was like I've got true faith in the one true God. So I love that that's something that still sticks out to you today, and that you're willing to chat about. So tell me about your dad. What did your dad do growing up? What did he do for work? What did it like when you look back at him and talk about it? And the reason I almost always ask this question is, some of the guys I talk to, they have never actually analyzed who their dad was, where he came from, because not everybody, especially Americans, look back historically on who their family was, right? It's not very normal for us to go, oh yeah, my great-grandfather is this person, or my grandfather is this person. They may know, Grandpa Joe, but they don't really know like who Grandpa was. So I love to ask, like, to understand who your dad was. Do you like what his history was, how he raised you, like, and have you ever analyzed it and thought about it and said, oh, okay, these are the tools he had, these are the tools that I took from him, these are, that sort of stuff.
I've never been asked this question on a podcast, and outside of a podcast, it's been many, many years since somebody has asked me about my dad and the influence he's had. So I appreciate the spirit of the question, and I'll just kind of riff here, and I'll speak from the heart, and I'm not even really sure what's going to come out, but I have a good relationship with my father. Always have. My father, his father, which obviously my grandfather, passed away when I think he was in his 50s. So he obviously had time with his father, but unfortunately he passed at a young age. I only got to meet him once, my grandfather, that is. And I think because of that, I ended up spending a lot of time with my father. He and I shared the common bond and connection that my father played college baseball. I played 1 year of college baseball. And so, man, I have the fondest of memories of just spending Saturdays the entire day at the baseball park. He was my coach. And so every year I grew up my whole life. I played sports, and baseball was my main sport. And so we spent a lot of time together. I remember him teaching me how to swing, how to pitch, how to catch. And I literally, there's a park that's probably 25-minute ride from where I live today that I specifically remember the part of the field where he taught me how to pitch and catch. And so that leads me to believe that I have great memories of my father. He was the district manager of a pharmacy. It was called a company called Fedco, which I think they went bankrupt many, many, many years ago. It was kind of like the equivalent of Eckerd back in the day. I don't know if you guys had Eckerd where you are in Florida, but kind of like the Eckerd competitor. And so, he was just a district manager. And so he was involved in managing a bunch of different stores. And sometimes he'd take me to work, and one of the things I think I recognize that this reminds me I should share this with him, because I don't think I have, is, and it might even be a reflection for me as I'm sharing this with you, Adam, is I saw his work ethic, and I saw what he put into it. My mom also shared that same strong work ethic, and I would think that's where this comes from for me. The ambition that I have, the desire that I have to not just grow a business, but grow personally, grow as the best father I can be, the best husband I can be. I have to think that came from my parents, because what's that saying, Adam? It's not what's taught, it's what's caught.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things my wife and I try to be as conscious as possible about. It's like our kids are always watching. And now that I'm sharing this, I was probably watching them, even when they weren't communicating with me, and I saw how they treated each other, and I saw how they went about life and their work ethic. And so, yeah, man, I have a great, to this day, in fact, he was the one that picked me up from the airport yesterday. We have we're both very competitive. So at times we can butt some heads, but nothing out of the norm, man. I have a lot of respect for my father. He's taught me a lot throughout the years, as my mother has. And man, sometimes I just feel like I have no reason that I could ever complain. And I do my best to be very conscious of not complaining or making excuses, because I'm very much somebody who looks inward in terms of accountability and responsibility for whatever I have or don't have, or for whatever happens to me. That also came from my parents, but they did so much for me that what could I possibly ever complain about? Yeah. You know, they put a roof over my head, food in my stomach. I'm super healthy. They instilled the right values in me. I mean, I could never repay them. And I think the one thing that's coming out for me selfishly as I'm sharing this is that I need to just share that with them more. That's probably an area that I'm failing in.
Yeah, it's a, you know, and until we start thinking about it and reflect on it, everybody goes through life doing their thing. So thinking about it, reflecting on it, looking at them and understanding. And as I'm hearing you say that and talk about your parents, I'm thinking to myself, man, You said that your parents taught you kind of like basically taking it on yourself. Anything that's out there, anything that's happened, it's basically on you, which I greatly appreciate. And I'm venturing to guess, just reflecting on my wife's family, is a lot of that comes from the fact that they're like, nobody's there for you. Like, they came from Cuba, nobody was there for them. They had to figure it out themselves. Like, they know what it's like when the government's looking out for you. Like, they're not. They're not. I promise. But here in this country, we have a habit of going, oh well, the government will take care of me if I fail miserably, and it's like. No, like, you take care of your daggum self. Like, stand up for yourself, do something, make it happen. And it's, you know, I love that it's one of the reasons I love chatting with, especially Cuban immigrants or families of Cuban immigrants or anywhere from a communist countries, because they realize what it actually means.
Yeah. I think one thing is you can't take things for granted.
Yes.
You can never take anything for granted. I think when you grow up in a communist country where they basically tell you what you can and can't do, not basically, that's exactly how it works. And then you experience freedom, you're like, you now have that juxtaposition. Like, you know dark from light. And so I think that just shapes how you think and how you operate in this world. Unfortunately, and maybe it's a conversation for a different day, unfortunately, I think the Cubans nowadays that come to the States, they are very much programmed to want the handout, which is very unlike the mentality that my parents grew up with when they were kids and they had to come. So, yeah.
Yeah, you're definitely not wrong. It's funny. I've got a shirt on today that says "Enjoy Capitalism," and it's one of those things that's the farther and farther we get away from true capitalism, the worse and worse things end up for us here. And I would love to just live in a capitalist country where, you know, we look at business from a Darwin perspective. Only the strong survive, and if you're able to make and adapt and overcome, then the business works. If it doesn't, then it doesn't. Like,
that's right.
Okay, and that's just the way it goes. But anyways, I don't want to go off too long of a tangent on that one. But no, I tell your parents from me sincerely, thank you for instilling those types of values. You know, I love being able to hear it. Too many times, I shouldn't say too many times, oftentimes I hear a lot on this podcast that they're not getting great values from their family and they had to figure that out on their own. So I love being able to see how the values can travel down and only increase as we continue to build on them. You know, the goal being your parents' ceiling is now your floor. Your ceiling is now your kid's floor, and just keep that growing and rising.
Yeah.
And not go the 3 generations, you know, shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves conversation that a lot of people have.
And Adam, man, to piggyback on something you just said, you used the phrase "travel down." You know, for those listening to the podcast or maybe watching this, think about the impact not only that your parents had on you, but that you're going to have on your children, and then go a step beyond. Like, the impact that you have on your children, what that's going to have when they have kids, God willing, if they want kids, right? And so we're shaped by our past and our upbringing. And I realize that, man, I'm flawed in many ways, right? Like, I certainly don't have everything figured out. I mean, I make mistakes like anybody else. And sometimes I catch myself and I'm like, it can be a small little moment that I have with my daughter, and that could impact her positively or negatively in the future, right? There's big T's and little T's. And what I mean by that are there's big trauma and there's little traumas. And so I think, fortunately, I'm more aware of making sure that however I'm shaping them is going to be for the positive more times than not, right? If I lose patience or I raise my voice or something like that, I'm now thinking, okay, well, what meaning does she draw from that? Or how does that impact them? I don't know that my parents had that level of awareness when they were raising me, but I think now, because of me immersing myself into personal development and having conversations with men like you about this type of stuff, it's brought a certain level of awareness that I think has made me a better father. Although, again, full transparency, it's not like I have everything figured out. Far from that.
None of us do. None of us do. And it's one of those things, you don't know how bad you screwed up until probably your kids have kids, and then you're like, oh, I shouldn't have done that, because now I see me in that screw up that just happened. But,
exactly right.
I think that's, as you were saying, that the big T's and little T's, and I think that's similarly to, like, you're juggling all the balls. Drop the rubber ones, not the glass ones. Let's not have any of the big T traumas with our kids. The little T traumas we could work through, but let's do everything we can to not have any of the big T traumas.
Amen.
And what else can you do as long as you're aware of where they're at? And that's where I love having this podcast, is to hear people talk about how they look at different things in their life, and how they look at how they prevent those big T traumas, or how they maybe they had some of those big T traumas and they're like, how do I make sure that I'm not passing that on to my kids? So I think that's the best we can do, is say, hey, again, let's make my ceiling your floor, which would be, make sure you don't have to suffer any of the things that I suffered. You're going to suffer something, but let's let it not be the same. If we do the same mistake over and over again, it's a problem.
100%.
And the Bible talks about us, our children's children, and passing it on, and making sure that our children's children are taken care of. So, and one thing I want to jump on that you had said also is if our children or our children's children want to have children. And I'm like, man, hopefully I'm doing a job of saying having kids is the most amazing thing you could possibly ever do in your life. It's the only thing that is going to last. Your business is not going to last. Your money is not going to last, but your kids will last. And your money may last if you've done a good job with your kids, and your kids' kids. Let them, but it's their money at that point, not your money. So if I'm dead and gone, it's their money now. So hopefully I've taught them enough to have that go. And that, man, if you can have 15 kids, have 15 kids, as long as you're not relying on them to take care of them.
I wasn't sure if we were going to go here, but it's interesting. Someone recently asked me when we were in the Dominican Republic, and we did this trek up. It's the biggest mountain in the Caribbean. It's called Pico Duarte. It's 11,000 feet. So you have a lot of time out there in nature by yourself. You also have intimate moments with people where you're having conversations and you're going deep. And one of the guys asked me, would you and your wife have an interest in having a third? My wife had 2 high-risk pregnancies. She had preeclampsia on the first, and so doctor advised, like, look, obviously you can do whatever you want. I don't recommend it. And so we said, God bless us with 2 healthy, beautiful girls. Like, we'll stop there. But I love a big family. There's something beautiful to me about having kids. And it hit me, man, because I have 2 girls. When I had to sign the release form to essentially tie my wife's tubes, or to have the doctor do that, obviously, I was like, man, my last name ends here. And so it's about, like, they are a piece of me. They're a reflection of me. And so I need to show up and be the best version of myself that I can for them every day. Because, brother, as you know this, man, it sounds cliche, but right after this podcast, in the next 5 minutes, I don't know if I'm going to be here. Yeah. Right? We assume we're going to wake up the next day, but we don't know. And so what have I left inside of my children? What have I left with them in terms of those morals and values, and helping them to get to know God and have a relationship with Him? Those are the things, experiences I have with them. That, I think, is what's most important for me, that I'm very aware of. Not necessarily leaving them a bunch of money, but teaching them, okay, how do you make that money? And then what do you do with it? And how do you impact others? And those are some of the things that I like to have conversations with them about, versus just like giving them handouts. And by the way, I wasn't suggesting that that's what you were saying. I know that's not what you're saying. No. Yeah. But it's what I think it's what's most important. It's the experiences, right? And the conversations you have, the meaningful conversations you have, not necessarily just giving them something, a gift, a toy, those types of things.
Yeah, and I tell my kids all the time, and I love being able to do it, is it goes right in line with that. So their birthdays are in December, my 2 boys. So we've got both birthdays and then Christmas and then New Year's and all of this. It's like, okay, well, what would you rather have this year for your birthday? Would you rather have gifts or an experience? And almost always they want an experience because that is something that lasts so much longer. They're not going to remember the Transformer toy or whatever. It's going to be gone. But that cruise that we took to the Caribbean and we got whipped around by the wind in the middle of the they're going to remember that forever. Like
100%.
Literally crawling on the third floor of it, like we were getting kicked off. They're going to remember that forever because what an experience it was. Not great for my mom who was on that cruise. She got really sick as we were rocking. But my kids loved it, and it's a great memory. So, and those are the things that if I could have anything, it would be to get rid of all these toys and just do an experience with them all the time. Because I
completely agree. Man,
it's
something we used to do years ago that we've gotten away from, and this reminds me, is whenever my kids would get a gift, they'd have to give one of their current gifts, give it to somebody else, right? And so, but yeah, to your point, man, it's about those are the lasting memories, not the 15th or 150th toy they get on Christmas or whatever. And so, man, I think anytime we can, as fathers, anytime that we can put our children in a position to serve and help and give and contribute, those are the types of things that really start to shape their future and leave in them, so that it's this ripple effect, right? If you instill that in them early to serve and give and help and create an impact and think about others, things that unfortunately I don't think a lot of parents are conscious enough to teach their kids. They're just kind of like, they're the leaf in the wind, like just they're parenting, they're doing the best they can. But I think that's why I have appreciation for you and a podcast like this, because we can have conversations like this. And brother, like I've always had the mentality of, being a podcast host myself, if I can impact or inspire one person, think about the ripple effect that could have on their family, on their community, and so on. And so I appreciate, you having these conversations and taking the time and energy to host this podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, I love doing it. So it's well worth it. I need some more viewership, but other than that, I love doing it.
We all do, right?
Yeah. I don't know. For some reason, people don't like to talk about being a better dad. I mean, come on, bring it on. Bring it on. Be a better dad. So I want to kind of go into, you'd mentioned that you're the first entrepreneur in your family, right? So that's something that you had experience in. So how did you get to the point of becoming an entrepreneur? What made you, you talked a little bit about it, like seeing that you wanted to plan that out. But how did you choose real estate? How did you jump into, doing podcasts? Like how did a lot of get into your brain?
Yeah, look, when I was at FIU and I graduated a double major, finance and MIS, which is management information systems, I started interviewing with big companies like IBM and Johnson & Johnson, Procter & Gamble, ended up getting a job with GE, and it was a rotational program. It's called the FMP, the Financial Management Program, which is basically their training grounds for the future CFOs and CEOs of the different GE businesses. Well, 3 months into that job, I quickly realized this isn't what I want. I'm always I've been able to reverse engineer things pretty well, and so I remember looking at my boss and her boss all the way up to what this position was essentially grooming us to be, the future CFOs. And I'm like, I don't want that job. I don't want the 70, 80-hour work weeks and clocking in, clocking out, all the politics that come in corporate America. So I finished that 2-year rotational program. And when I went backpacking around Europe, which we ended up doing, I think it was 53 cities in 22 countries in 3.5 months, on a $7,000 budget, by the way, which was insane. Like, we were roughing it, backpacking the whole nine. It was on the train, which is called the Eurorail, where I started to read books like Think and Grow Rich and Rich Dad, like a lot of the commons that I'm sure you've probably heard from every entrepreneur out there. And that was the catalyst for me to say, hey, when I moved back to Miami, which, by the way, Adam, 25 years old, moving back into my parents' house was not the way I wrote it up.
Yeah, I would imagine. Yeah.
I had some drive and some motivation. I said, I'm going to plant my flag in real estate. And it's so interesting to me that when you declare something internally, I think God starts to open up certain doors for you. Well, less than a couple of weeks later, I went into an internet cafe in Ibiza, and a friend of mine was inviting me to a boot camp. And it was called Marketing for Real Estate Deals. Only problem was it was $997, which at that time might as well have been $997,000. I didn't have it, but I also knew that I didn't want to go work for somebody. And I've always been a ready, fire, aim. Like, in other words, I don't feel like I have to have all the answers before I take an action. I have enough faith and not necessarily faith in me, although I believe in myself, but faith that God is going to just point me in the right direction. Like, man, take the first step. Get uncomfortable, figure it out. And so I went to this boot camp, and then 2 months later ended up doing my first real estate deal, which was $44,000. I ended up splitting that with a partner. And so I basically made half my salary on one real estate deal. And for me, that was like, okay, I'm planting my flag on real estate. Specifically, I was in a niche called wholesaling. So we would find undervalued deals and then assign the contract for a profit. And yeah, man, 700 plus deals later, over a decade later, I've been unemployed basically.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah. I love that you it's one of those burn the ships type of moments. You said, this is what I'm going to do. This is how it's going to go. And then there's no going back. And once you get that taste, off to the races. That's fantastic. So now, when you've been doing that for a little while. What other you've got your podcast. You're doing storage stuff. What is it now? Like, how did it go from wholesaling to where you're at now?
Yeah, great question. 2017, after doing a lot of deals, I realized, I think the irony for me, Adam, is I got into real estate because I wanted to enjoy all the benefits that real estate can provide. Cash flow being one of them. And ultimately, go an extra layer deep. Like, why do people want cash flow? Why do people want to make more money? Well, it's because they want more freedom. They want to experience certain things, time freedom. But man, for me, I had built essentially a high paying job. I built a business that was very transactional. I started from zero every single month, and it was you eat what you kill type of thing. And it became a business of volume. We had to do a lot of deals. And as I started to grow the business, my overhead started to increase, my margins started to decrease. And I remember in 2017, I was on a cruise with my wife, and I had a team of, I think, 6 or 7 at that point. And man, it was just like putting out fires. I felt like I was a firefighter in my own business. And I told her, I said, something has to shift. So we started buying rentals. I got to 4 or 5 rental properties, thinking that was going to be my path to quote unquote passive income. I quickly realized nothing passive about owning a bunch of single family rentals and being the landlord. And so I happened to be coaching somebody at the time that owned a storage facility. And again, I think because I was aware now of a different asset class, God put somebody else in my life who had been in the storage business for a long time. He and I had a conversation about storage. And man, I said in 2020 when COVID came, it was such a blessing in disguise because I had already been thinking about unwinding this beast of a business that was chewing up 40 to 45 grand a month in overhead. And when COVID came, I said, you want to know what? I think now's the time to pivot and to transition. And so over the next, 3 to 4 to 5 months, I ended up unwinding this business. And then later that year, a mentor of mine told me, he said, why don't you take some time to reflect and think about what do you want? And then what's the path God wants for you? Some of the best advice I ever got, because I was wired to want to jump into the next business and not be thoughtful and intentional about what that was. And then later that year, December 2020, is when I said, hey, I'm gonna devote myself to the self-storage business. It's a business that it was just in alignment with what I was looking for. And I only got that clarity because I was thinking ahead about what I wanted. Back to the whole design the vision, then the business thing. And that's how I ultimately arrived on self-storage.
Yeah, it's funny. I got into real estate, because my wife told me that I should look at buying real estate. And I was a paycheck to paycheck guy. Smart. Yes, very smart. She saw her parents, and this goes back to why I ask about your parents as well, or everybody's parents, because we 9 times out of 10, whether we're thinking about it or not, we're going to run towards what our parents did or we're going to run away from what our parents did. And I followed what my parents did. It was paycheck to paycheck for a long time. Didn't really pay attention to what I could pay. I was in the military. The government gave me a paycheck every 2 weeks, which meant I have 2 weeks to spend this money, and they're going to give me more. So why would I save money? This is no big deal, Yeah. Never a thought about the future, never a thought about where it goes. But my wife, she saw her abuelita own a couple houses, and her mom and dad own a house, and it brought in extra income for them, and she was like, we should buy real estate. Yeah. And I was like, you're silly. I'm going to go buy stuff in the stock market. Because by this point, I had understood saving money made sense, because she had a savings account, and I was like,
what a novel concept, right?
Who saves money? Yeah. Oh, wait, that actually is smart. That's actually a good idea. Wait a second. Yeah. So, and then I started developing a lot more. But I ended up saying, no, I'm going to go buy apartment buildings, because it was like, man, the scale is so much better at apartment buildings. This passive income thing sounds like a great idea. And I was one of the many fooled into this idea that there's such thing as passive income. And I like to remind folks that there's no such thing as passive income. If it is truly passive, then it is truly not under your control. It's a scale, right? If the more passive it is, the less control you have. The more control you have, the less passive it is, right? So you have to understand where you're at on that scale and where your risk tolerance is at. Like, how much control do I want to give somebody else to allow me to be more passive versus how much control do I want to have the control to manage it, right? So, but regardless, it's not passive. But the storage side of the house has always intrigued me because it was like, man, if I, like, the tenants is so much easier. Like, I just sweep this out and I'm done. Like, what a deal. This is great. Like, that is way easier to find somebody to manage sweeping out a daggum storage unit than it is to find somebody to manage making sure that, you didn't move your stuff out and now I've got to evict you and I've got to do all this stuff. So what was it that triggered in your brain? You talked to that guy, obviously, the guy you were coaching, and he does storage stuff, but it was like, what was it that made you go, I'll tell you, this is the active part that I want to do? Yeah,
and there was a lot that came out of a couple of conversations I had with him. But the first was, for perspective, at that time I had a team of, I think, 9. And again, I mentioned my overhead was 40 to 45 grand a month. And it was sometimes managing a team, you have personalities and you have people have emotions and issues, and it became a lot. And I ran a virtual business, essentially. Like, we wouldn't have an office. And so that, I think, can create its own challenges. But he didn't have any employees. At the time, I only had 4 or 5 single family rentals. So that meant 4 or 5 tenants and a bunch of toilets and 4 or 5 roofs. Well, he didn't have employees. He didn't have tenants. He didn't have toilets. He wasn't dealing with a lot of the traditional headaches that a single family real estate investor deals with. And he had scale. At that time, I think he only had 1 storage unit and was generating, I think it was 3-4 grand a month in cash flow, after his debt service. And that was a relatively small facility. And so it really just opened my eyes. And it's interesting, Adam, that I'm talking to a multifamily guy, because I incorrectly assumed that once I graduated from single family, apartments is what makes the most sense. And I started looking at the different commercial asset classes, and I didn't necessarily want a bunch of tenants and a bunch of toilets. I got into wholesaling because I'm not a very good fix and flipper, and I don't really enjoy the rehab part of the game. And so I'm like, man, I really like this thing about storage. And then I started learning that, at least at the time, storage was considered the most recession-resistant asset class when you go back and look at what was going on with storage in 2007, 8, and 9. And even before then, and it's a very sticky product. I have now come to learn, because I own several facilities, that when people move into a storage unit, they tend to stay and pay, because think of the pain of disconnect of moving a bunch of stuff into a 10 by 15 and then having to get it out. And then I learned that typically the cost for a unit, depending on the market, depending on a bunch of different factors, $50 to $350, that is not going to break a lot of people. It's a nuisance expense. It's not $1,500 or $2,000 a month in rent. And so I wanted to get involved in a business that was low headache factor, that could be scalable, where I didn't have to have a big team, and I could run it with technology virtually from anywhere in the world. And so and I already knew real estate. And storage is a business with the benefits of real estate. So it just checked off a lot of boxes for me. And I think whether you're interested in storage or not is not the point of me sharing this, but if you're evaluating a business, write down what's important to you. And then make sure that whatever business you're going to pursue can check as many of those boxes as possible. So those are some of the things, man. I mean, I can go on and on about why storage, but those were initially, anyways, Adam, some of the things that really appealed to me.
No, I appreciate that. It is it's funny. The first thing, I never bought a single family house for an investment. My very first investment property was a 62 unit apartment. And everybody looked at me and they were like, well, you didn't start with single family? Isn't that what you have to do? And I'm like, no, you don't have to do that. Because I analyzed, to your point, what is it that I want? Where is it that I want to go? I didn't have a plethora of understanding of all the different real estate options out there. I understood some real estate stuff. I knew where I wanted to go, and I said, this is the one that makes sense to me. I'm going to go buy apartments. So that's what I did. And that's what I encourage everybody to do. Don't just, somebody's going to tell you that, a single family house makes more sense because you can understand. And I get that. Mentally, a lot of people can understand owning a single family house easier than they can, people buy apartments. That's mind boggling to some people. Same thing with a large, a 400 storage unit place down the road? Do people own that? Like, that doesn't make sense in people's brain, but they understand a house. But if you step back and truly understand it, what is it that makes sense for you? What business and asset class makes the most sense for the lifestyle that you want? And do the analysis up front. Don't do it after you've already owned a bunch of stuff like I did, right? I mean, I sort of did it beforehand, but open your aperture up a lot more. Understand where it is you want to go. Understand what the world is going to look like in 10 years. Understand what your family is going to look like in 10 years. And then go, okay, this is the path I think I want to be able to take. And that doesn't mean it's not going to change in 5 years or next year, but at least you're doing the due diligence of understanding where you're going. So I love that you're saying that, because it is same thing with parenting. Where do I want to go as a dad? Like, what is it that I want to see out of my kids in 10 years? What can I do now to make sure that in 10 years they're doing those things that I want them to see, or that I want to see out of them? Okay, well, take the time. Do it. Don't just be that leaf in the wind you talked about earlier and just get blown around wherever life brings you. I get it that a lot of people, life is just happening to them. It's not happening for them, or it's not happening by them. It's just happening to them. But don't be those people. Step back and realize, okay, I need to make an impact in my life, and I need to make a difference in my life. So I want to ask in that same light, what are the conversations like with your wife when you're talking about this business stuff, when you're talking about raising kids, when you're talking about not being a leaf in the wind? How do you guys make sure that you're aligned in what this future is that you want to bring forth?
Well, I'll tell you one thing that has really helped me is there's a lot that has helped my wife and I. And look, again, in full transparency, there's areas where we can continue to grow and get better.
Of course.
But I think it's, and this is going to sound like, thanks, Alex, you're breaking ground here. But keeping lines of communication open, I think if I would encourage everybody to carve out time on a weekly basis to talk about certain things. And that could be parenting, that could be finances, that could be about where do we want to go in the next 5 to 10 years. And we've been inconsistent as of late. And so one of the things I've always told myself, if I'm going to hop on a podcast, whether it's mine or somebody else's, like, just be genuine and authentic, right? And so I want to share that there's been a level of inconsistency there with us. And when we've been consistent with him, Adam, it's really helped us, right? And just carving out intentional time to talk about certain things, whether it's, hey, let's review our budget, or, hey, we do something called the preloaded year, which I learned from a gentleman named Dan Martell. And the preloaded year is basically, it's a calendar of 365 days of the year. And so now we look at that November, December, and we say, hey, what travel do we want to do? We have my daughter's cheerleading, or we have this dance thing. And so plan out. So now you have 1-page visual representation of what you want your year to look like in terms of important moments or events or things you want to attend. And so I think just making sure that you're on the same page with where you're at and where you want to go, I think has been extremely helpful. Also bringing her with me to certain events, like we did Tony Robbins' Date with Destiny in 2019, right before COVID came. And that was a game changer for us, because the more that you can be aligned with your wife, not just from a faith perspective, but how do we want to parent, what's important to us, the more you can be aligned, the better, right? And so I think those are some of the things I think, as I think about our conversation so far, Adam, for me anyways, the thread that has connected all of our different talking points has been clarity and intentionality. And I think if you can get with your wife and just make sure that you have clarity about where you're at, where you want to go, and then operate with a certain level of intentionality, it can only help.
Yeah, one of the things I say maybe too much on this podcast is when there are problems in the relationship, and they always say the number one cause of divorce is finances and all that, and I tend to disagree with that statement. I think that the number one cause of the divorce is the lack of communication in that financial area, or what your plans are, and lack of alignment in those. If you have the communication, you can get yourself in alignment. But if nobody's talking about it, then the alignment will never happen, because one person is living their life, another person is living their life. You're not living a married life together. You're just living your own lives, and then what do you know? There's conflict, and the gears mesh, and then all of a sudden you need to replace the gears, and you're like, how about we just get a divorce instead? Well, no, if you started the communication a long time ago and not worried about it. So do the work up front so that you don't have to do the work later. It's similar to a plumbing problem in your house. If you have a leak, don't just patch the leak, fix the problem. Like
Right.
fix the problem before it turns into a big one. So
And by the way, to your point, whenever we try to patch the problem or put a Band-Aid on, it ends up making the problem worse later on down the road. So just don't kick the can down the road. Like figure out what the root cause is and attack it then. Don't wait for it to grow into a bigger thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that goes with the clarity and intentionality you talked about. And I'm going to double down on the date with Destiny with your spouse.
Did you do it?
Oh yeah, we did it in 2020, right at the beginning of COVID. And we did it. They started doing the virtual one, right? Because it was either 2020 or 2021. I don't remember which year it was that we did it. But
I think ours was November of 2019 when we did it in West Palm Beach. Yeah.
So it was probably November of 2020 then, roughly, somewhere around there. I remember it being a little chilly, even in North Carolina, where we went, because we met at a friend's house, and there was a group of couples that did it all together.
Oh,
and
amazing.
It was amazing. So there was like 8 couples in there, and like you got super tight with that couple, and you got super tight with your wife, because you're working on things that you didn't even know you had to work on before, you didn't even think about before. And the fact that this alignment is going in such a, I strongly encourage folks to go to Date with Destiny with their spouse, because it is a phenomenal event. So now that you guys are in alignment, you guys understand where you want to go, you guys are raising these 2 beautiful daughters. What sort of conversations do you have around, like, what do we want to do with our kids? What kind of life do we want our kids to lead when they're adults? How do we implement that now to help them understand where they're going? And what sort of intentionality do you guys have behind that to make sure that you're setting your daughters up for the right lifestyle that they should be?
Yeah, look, we're pretty intentional. Again, back to what I shared I think at the beginning of our conversation. It starts with faith for us. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I think if you're a person of faith, anyways, I'm going to speak to a Christian. Right now. And if that's not you, then that's perfectly fine. You can, obviously tune this out or take whatever may serve you. I believe that the job of a father, one of the main gifts I can give my girls is to get them to have a relationship with God. Mm-hmm. And so we're very intentional about prayer before meals and just making sure that we're always expressing that gratitude. Again, going back to the conversation of not taking things for granted, probably something I got from my parents because of their upbringing in Cuba. So also giving and contributing. And so my daughter was inspired about 1.5 years ago. At the time, she was 8, about to turn 9, I think it was. Yeah, she was 8 years old. She started a little bracelet business. And I use the word business very loosely, but she essentially makes bracelets with rubber bands. And it was her wanting to do that so that she now donates 100% of the money to the Children's Hospital here.
Nice.
In fact, today, Adam, and I think you'll appreciate this, we had a conversation because she wanted to buy, they were having like a donut sale at school. And I can give her the $2. No problem, right? But I said, hey, baby, why don't you grab some of the money that you have? And she goes, oh, but then I don't have it. If I give the $2 and I buy it, then I don't have the $2. I'm like, yeah, that's the way it works, right? You want the donut? Why don't you buy the donut? And we started talking about, because she's like, I go, why don't you sell some bracelets? And she goes, remember, I'm donating all of it. And so now we're having conversations about okay, well, do you want to make this a business or is this a nonprofit? And so just those conversations, to the degree that you can have that with a 10-year-old, I think it proves to me that we're doing something right in terms of, faith, giving, thinking about others and not just thinking about yourself, the golden rule of life. We have conversations about that pretty frequently. It's a thing in our household to put them down, my wife and I together. We always read, I shouldn't say always, we often read the devotional for the day, which is Jesus Calling. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because when we're tired and we just want to put them to bed and go to bed ourselves, she will bring it up hey, we didn't do Jesus Calling. And so, man, that gives me a little jolt of energy, we're doing something right. Yeah. But we're not messing them up too bad, right? Yeah. And there's areas that we can improve, of course, because we've never arrived. At least that's my mentality. Mm-hmm. And so we're very intentional about faith, giving, contribution, how we treat others, how we show up. I don't know if that answers your question, but those are the main things that come to mind. And then obviously, because I'm an entrepreneur, I think like my daughter wants to own a chain of dance studios, and she talks about that now.
Yeah.
My other one talks about wanting to be a YouTuber because that's what kids want to do these days.
It's 2025, yeah.
100%. And they see their dad, host a podcast and has a YouTube thing. And so I don't hear anything about being a doctor or a lawyer, like the old traditional stuff that I grew up with,
Yeah, for sure. And it's, I think, again, it's one of those things that kids run towards or away from what their parents are doing. And if we're kind of showing them a different way, and that's one of the things I try to tell my kids, like, I don't need you to do real estate and run business and do all of that. I just need you to know that it's an option.
That's right.
Like what sort of things, like if you want to go be a doctor, I'm going to do everything I can to get you into the best school to be the best doctor that 100%. You can be. But if you have zero desire to go to college, then I don't care. Like, I don't need you to go to college. Like, it's wherever it makes sense for you to go and that you want to do and that you're passionate about. Because, again, you've planned and you've thought about it and you know what your strengths and weaknesses are. If you're not very good at math and science, probably doctor's not going to work out for you. You need to know a little bit about science and be able to do all of that. But I love the so Jesus Calling. Tell me about that. It's a devotional. Is that just what you guys call it, or is that already the name of it?
In fact, well, I'm not going to step away to grab it, but yeah, it's just it's a one-page devotional. It's called Jesus Calling by Sarah Young. If you're a Christian, I could not recommend it enough, brother. I can tell you countless stories how you wake up one morning, you're feeling a certain way, maybe you're in a season of life where you're going through something, and you pick up that book, and more times than not, it's going to speak right at your particular situation. So the book is written, again, the lady's name is Sarah Young, the author. It's written as if God is speaking to you.
Okay.
So it's not written as the author speaking to you. It's written through God's voice. And obviously it's inspired by the Bible and his teachings and the message. So man, so they see me in the morning reading the devotional, oftentimes in the scripture and prayer, and I'd like to believe that has had an influence on them, and those are the types of ripple effects that I'm aware of that I want to just make sure that they walk away with. One of the things I recently started doing, inspired by a friend of mine, due to a similar conversation like the ones we're having now, is he goes, for every single day since my daughter was born, I've been praying for her future husband.
Yes.
And I was like, dude, like it just hit me right. And I'm like, why have I not been doing that? Why have I not been thinking ahead, not just for my life and my family's life, but their life? So that's something I recently started doing. And that just came on the back of a conversation, man. That's why I think, I have so much respect and admiration for content creators, especially when they're putting out like really good content that helps people, that actually helps people. And I'm hoping that this conversation will do that for at least one person listening, is because, man, that can be the catalyst for a lot of change. That can be that ripple effect I often refer to.
Yeah, the business that I just bought, my new business partner in that, his wife said the same thing recently. Like, oh, we love praying for the future spouses of our kids, and my wife and I were like, what a great idea! Like, we should totally be doing that. So now we do that even with our sons, like with our daughter as well, right? But she doesn't understand it yet; she's only 2. But with our sons, we're praying for their future wife, and they get to hear that and get to know that like we have an inherent desire for them to have a wonderful, loving relationship with a wonderful, loving spouse who is also faithful and spirit-filled, and we're always here for them no matter what, because one day they are going to leave their father and mother and become one with their spouse. And I want them to lead a family in an amazing way and pray for their kids' spouses as well. So like you said at the beginning, more is caught than taught. So if I can help them catch something and let them learn it and go and implement the same exact thing in their life, wonderful. Yeah. I would love to be able to see that.
That was so powerful for me on that conversation, because I think you're going to agree with me, Adam. Like the person you
probably
choose
not.
To spend
we
the
haven't
rest of your
agreed on
life
anything
with.
yet this podcast. So.
Yeah, right. But no, man. I mean, look, the person you're going to choose to spend the rest of your life with has got to be one of the most important decisions you're ever going to make.
Yes.
Top 1 or 2. Right. And then if you're a Christian and believe in the power of prayer, think about that. I mean, think about your kid ending up with the wrong person and the ripple effect that has on them and their children and so on. And so when I heard that, it just made so much sense. And I kind of felt like an idiot for not having figured that out on my own. But anyway, so that's something we're now doing.
Yeah, so I'll say that and I've said it probably 100 times on this podcast, so I do agree with you, is that the number 2 most important decision you can make is who you marry. The number 1 is who you follow, and that's Jesus. And number 2 is who you marry. And that number 2, they better be following Jesus as well, is what I strongly encourage folks to do.
Agreed.
So you're not unequally yoked. But it is one of those things that it will make or break your entire future, is the person that you're marrying. Ask all those people who've given up half of their wealth and are now living in an apartment instead of their house, and who only get to see their kids on the weekends. Ask them if marrying the right person makes a difference. Sometimes that's their own fault. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes they were the wrong person. That other person should not have married them. So don't let anybody think that I'm just saying it's one side. But man, oh man, like, it makes a huge difference who you marry. I wouldn't be having this podcast if I didn't have my wife, because I wouldn't have ever bought real estate. I would have never thought about the things that I'm thinking of. It would have never happened. So,
absolutely.
So now, as you are raising these little girls, and you've already mentioned that one of them is kind of wanting to do a business, perhaps a nonprofit, which is what it is right now. How much implementation do you try to bring into having them see your business, having them see how you run things, having them understand what it is that Dad really does?
Yeah, it's a good question. So they come home from school at 3:30, 4 o'clock, whatever it is, and oftentimes I'm on a podcast or I'm on a coaching call. I lead a community called Storage Wins, where I teach people how to buy their first storage facility. And sometimes, to your point, and you said this before we started recording, sometimes they walk in here. I don't try to filter them out. I bring them on and I put them on my lap, and I have my clients and the community see them. I've had them come on and do a podcast with me. I've done that a few times, and it's been a couple of years since I've done that. But I think the more that we can open our business, our doors, our lives, what we do to our children, the better, right? I like quiet time, alone time with my wife. I want the girls to know, hey, mommy and daddy need their alone time as well. I want them to see us going out on date nights and having it on the calendar. And I think, again, back to that word intentionality, if you operate with a certain level of intentionality and then you just share with them your life, your business, and you open those doors, those are the types of things that I think can really impact them positively in the future. And so when it comes to business, I try to share with them as much as possible. My 8-year-old still quite doesn't understand the whole storage thing. Yeah. But yeah, I share with them, hey, daddy has these buildings and people pay money to rent space. And obviously I break it down for them in a way that I think they can understand it easier. Yeah. I'm not talking to them about cap rates or occupancy reports or anything like that. But yeah, so I could probably do a better job of bringing them more in. But yeah, I try to be very open about everything I'm doing and sharing with them why I'm doing it.
Yeah. And I think there's levels to bringing them in, right? I mean, you have a 10 and an 8-year-old, so give it time on various different things. So my 10-year-old knows a little bit more about the business than my 6-year-old does. My 2-year-old is still slacking. She doesn't get involved as much as she did. She's 2. Well, come on, step it up.
What you doing, man? Come on.
I know. Come on. You're a LeBar. Make it happen. So I want to kind of shift a little bit, just because I'd love to hear your perspective on this. I'm not sure I've ever asked this question on the podcast, but as you talked about, praying for your daughter's spouses, like their future husbands. So when it comes to that time, what is your thought process on, what is it that you as the dad is going to require of these men? Because it's on us to hand our daughters over to these men. So what is it that you are going to be requiring of this potential future husband? What are your thoughts on who that guy has to be to meet the right bar to take your daughter's hand?
Before I answer that question, and I think it's a great one, and I don't think anybody's ever asked me that, are you asking in terms of what I'm going to require from that specific individual that my daughter's chosen, or what I'd want her to, because I think it's kind of a nuanced question. Are you asking what I desire for my daughter in terms of a future man and what I'm going to want to see from that particular individual?
So I think the way I asked it, it's almost too leading. So let me adjust how I ask it, because your response is perfect to help me understand that I led too much, I think. I'll say with me personally, I have changed a lot. Like when I first got married to my wife, she told me about a friend of ours, this couple, She was friends with the woman. I got introduced to the man, police officer, great friend of mine now. But her, the friend, her dad, had told my friend, like, no, like, you're not ready to marry my daughter yet. You need to do X, Y, and Z before I'll allow you to do that. You need to finish your college. You need to have a good job. I need to know that you're financially responsible, all these things. And I thought how horrible that was. I was like, what in the world? Nobody's going to come at me and tell you that I'm not, like, I'm not good enough to marry their, like, and part of that was because I hadn't had a degree yet when I married my wife. I had left the military. I was in college. And so part of that almost felt like a slight on me. But now as a dad, I look at it and go, no, like, I need to be watchful over my daughter especially. Like, my boys are my boys, and I need to make sure that they're good, strong men before they leave my house. As long as they're under my house, they follow, my lead. But once they're on their own, they're on their own. But my daughter is a slightly different world, right? So I now have a different perspective on what I'm going to require of a man to come in. It's not, yes, it is my daughter's choice. I don't want anybody to hear that it's not I'm not going to choose my daughter's husband. But there are certain things that I'm going to say, hey, when you're finding a man, these are the things they should have. Yeah. And if the man doesn't come and ask for my hand, that's a problem. Doesn't ask for her hand, I should say. That's a problem. Yeah, I got you. When he does come, I'm going to ask him those certain questions. So I'm saying all that to set up the stage. What are your thoughts on your daughter's future husbands?
First thing I think about is, where is the person's faith? Because I think you touched on this 5-10 minutes ago. I think it is a recipe for disaster to marry somebody that doesn't share your faith, whatever that might be. I mean, I think you're setting yourself up for a lot of potential issues down the road. So where is that person's faith? Number two, how financially sound are they? And don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm not saying they need to be a millionaire. They need to be wealthy. They need to own a business. Are they financially sound? Are they going to be able to provide and protect, right? Is one of the immediate things I think about. How does that person treat others when others aren't looking, right? And so I'm very observant. And so not just how do they treat my daughter, which sounds very obvious, but like, how do they treat others? When we go to a restaurant, are they saying please and thank you? Do they pull out the chair? Like, little things like that might not seem like a big thing, but I think they can be very revealing. And so I'd be very observant. I would want to bring them into my household and make sure that I'm not having surface level conversations with them, but I'm getting inside their mind, and I want to know how they think. I want to know about their family, parents, their upbringing, because that, back to our, what we talked about earlier, that's going to have an impact on how that particular guy thinks. What's his past? Where has he, ask him hard questions. Hey, where do you feel like you're falling short? Where have you messed up? And am I getting a PC interview type answer, or am I getting the real and the authentic? And then how does he make her feel at the end of the day? How is she able to be herself? Or is she changing in order to comply because of whatever, right? So I think I'm going to have those difficult conversations before. It's not just, if somebody asks for my daughter's hand in marriage, it's not just, hey, I like you, yeah, sure. Yeah. No, I need to make sure that I could see that person as a son-in-law, and that I believe that that's the man who's meant to lead my daughter's household. If that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. And, and that's how I try to look at it with my sons as well. Like, are you going to be a strong leader in your house? I need to teach you how to do that. It's funny, recently I've been hearing this a little bit more, but, the Bible talks about the wife being the helper of the husband. And when you look back at the language that it uses, the only other time, it's used multiple times, that word helper, it's used multiple times, and every time it is God helping us.
Yes.
Like, it is not, so when people hear helper, oftentimes they think, oh yeah, your wife is your assistant. That's what you believe as a Christian. No. My wife is the strongest person I have in my life personally, and needs to be right there by my side all the time, and has that same word helper that is used by, for God in my life. And so how am I raising my daughters to be that helper for her future husband as well? I hope that I just am a good example for what it looks like to be a strong husband, a strong leader, and that I'm giving that example to both my sons and my daughter. But man,
a friend of mine told me recently, he's like, your daughter's probably going to marry somebody like you, or somebody that, And that makes sense because, I mean, we are the first man, at least hopefully, right? In most cases, the first man that they see and kiss and hug and love, and that gets, so am I, and it's actually, it's a reflection point for me to think like, man, am I showing up as the best version of myself? Would I want my daughter to marry somebody like me in the future? And if the answer is not like absolutely, then you got some work to do, right? And there's areas of my life where I say, hey man, that's an area where I need to grow in for sure, because what if my daughter was marrying this aspect of me? And I never like to judge anybody on their worst day or their worst decision. But back to the whole accountability thing, your daughter will likely marry somebody like you. And so if you're not thrilled with that prospect, then you got work to do on yourself.
For sure. And as you said that the first time, is your daughter's going to marry somebody like you. If anybody listening to that goes, ooh, that's uncomfortable. Well, then you definitely have some work to do, right?
Yeah,
like it's one of those things you better be thinking about it. Like, okay, because she's gonna find somebody like you. Oftentimes, there's that cliche, they marry their father, right? In that sense. So hopefully you're representing what it means to be a good one. So
Adam, my daughter, and if you look this up on Instagram or Facebook, you'll see the picture. But about a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks ago, at least as frequent as possible, I like to do daddy-daughter dates. And so I was taking my daughter out for ice cream, just very simple, just to hang out with her, type of thing. So we had a quick dinner and then ice cream. And I always open the door for my daughters. I do the same thing for my wife. And for the first time, I've done this many, many, many times. But for whatever reason, she just asked me, she's like, and she calls me Bobby, not Daddy, but Bobby, why do you open the door for me? And man, we had such a good conversation, and it led to, in the future, whenever you meet the person that you're meant to be with, filter through and ask yourself, do they do little things like that might seem very insignificant? And I told her it's because I love you and you matter to me and I want to take care of you. And it's a show of respect. And, we talked about chivalry and how chivalry isn't dead. And that's something that was done many, many, many years ago. But look, I've seen that from my parents. And so that's probably something I got from them. And so we had a fascinating conversation. And in her brain, she was like, why does he open the door for me? Because she probably doesn't see that very often. And I want whoever she is going to choose to do those little things like that. Pull out the chair at a restaurant or when you go out. If you're walking on the side of the road, she has asked me in the past, why do you always move mommy to the inside? Right? Instead of having my wife walking on the street or next to the street and I'm over here, I always move them to this side. And she's asking, why do you do that? Those are little things I hope she remembers in the future whenever she meets her person. For sure.
Absolutely. And it's just one of those things, knowing that you're putting them above you. Like they deserve that spot to be above you, taken care of, respected.
On the pedestal.
On the pedestal. Like you are leading them, right? And you're leading them well. So I love it. I love that you're having those conversations with your daughters, and it's well needed. I hope that everybody's hearing this and doing the same. Like, if you're not doing it, I hope you're going to start, right? If you're listening to this and you're not doing that, jump on it. Let them know. Should be the example. Don't just, again, more is caught than taught. Don't get me wrong. Hopefully they're asking the question, but if they're not, like, say it when you do it, right? Hey, little lady, I'm going to put you over here because I want to make sure that, I'm protecting you from anything that's going on out here. And that way they hear it and they go, oh, well, man, even if they don't ask, let them know. Fill in the gaps. Let it happen.
Yeah. And by the way, I would add, even if they push back, like, oh, Daddy, I can protect myself, or whatever they might say, because especially if they get a little bit older, and I have a 10-year-old now, so... but I'm going to maybe incorrectly assume that maybe at some point when she gets into her teens, I might get some pushback on some of these things. And that's okay in the future. I trust and have faith that she'll understand why.
Yeah, for sure. And that I'll and I trust and have faith that I'll know how to respond to it when she does have the pushback.
Very true.
Because that's always a fear. It's like, oh, what if they say this? I don't know what I'm going to say to that. Yeah, like the other day, my church was having like one of those fall festival type things. Invite the community in. Have different events, different things going on. And this they were playing this game. I'm going to forget the name of it right now. But basically, you're like bouncing this ball inside of this like octagon looking thing, and if it hits your legs, the kid gets out. I don't remember what it's called, but Gaga ball. There we go. Anyways, there's this girl in there, not one of our church members by any means, but my son gets she gets knocked out, and my son was like, okay, you're out. And then she called him an effing dick. And I was like, what in the world? I wasn't there, so I didn't hear it. But he heard it and was like, what? And somebody else heard it and was like, did you just say that to a kid? You know? And we had to sit there, and my wife and I were talking about it. And we were like, what? How should he respond? I don't even know how to tell him how to respond. And he was, because my wife asked him, like, what did you say? And he was like, nothing. What else am I going to say? Like, it is what it is. And I was like, well, I think that's a good response for him to have, to understand, because I've tried to tell him, like, you're going to hear all sorts of terrible things in the world. Those terrible things don't have to hurt you.
Yeah.
They don't. Things are going to come in your ears. That doesn't mean they have to enter your heart. Just move on from it and let it go. Now, if those things start to enter your heart and then they start to exit your mouth, then we're going to have some issues. But they can enter your ears. They don't have to enter your heart. And so I love that he responded that way, but it led to a question for my wife and I, like, how should we have him respond? How would I want to respond? How, what does that do? I still don't necessarily know the answer, other than I think you did the right thing, bud. Like, just let it go. It doesn't have to, turn into a fight. It doesn't have to turn into anything. Just, my initial thought was, let that person know, especially for young ladies, is, man, that tells me a lot about the ugliness of your heart right now, and I hope that being here you can overcome that. But that's more than I can expect a 10-year-old to jump on. But
But look, I mean, to your point, sometimes my daughters have told me things that they've heard from friends or classmates, and I always like to use those, even though I might not necessarily know how I want them to respond. I take it as an opportunity, big picture, to have them understand that if you go to a beach, you're going to get sand on you or you're going to get wet. And what I mean by that is the influence, the people around you, your circle can make or break you in many ways. And so make sure that, similarly to how we talked about the number 2 most important thing you can do is choose your spouse. I like to make sure my daughters know, choose your friends wisely.
Yes.
Who are you going to let into your circle? Because it is going to have an influence on you one way or the other, right? There's only but so much resistance and willpower. If you hang out with a bunch of people that just don't share your values, your morals, or not aligned with you ethically, I don't care how strong you are in that department, it's going to seep through in some way, shape, or form. And so oftentimes I don't know, I don't have the right answer. I don't know how to respond, but I'll try to zoom out and use it as a teaching moment or a learning lesson.
For sure. And that's all we can do. Even if we make the mistake, use it as a teaching moment, a learning lesson for the kiddos. Like, let them understand that we're all faulty and, all have fallen short. So, so now as you're growing this business, where are you trying to bring it now, right? You're doing coaching, you're doing storage yourself, you're doing your podcast. Where are you trying to grow this to? What are you trying to build at the moment?
Yeah, this is you don't understand, like, how the timing of your question. Because what's been on my heart lately is how do I bring God more into this business? How do I use this as a business to share his message more, to bring him closer to God? And by the way, Adam, man, I hope this is your podcast, man, but there's been a lot of talk about faith. And so I hope that's okay. I'm just sharing with you, like, what's on my heart, brother. Like, So I had a coaching client who came into our community August 4th. September 5th, 31 days later, he went under contract on his first storage facility. It happened to be, sounds very convenient, it was $1 million. And I asked him, I said, hey, Jeremy, can I interview you on our upcoming coaching call? Because I want the community to hear, like, that. By the way, that's not super common. In fact, in our marketing, I tell people 6 to 12 months, which I've had coaches and mentors tell me, like, that sounds like a long time frame. Why don't you shorten that up? It's like, it's a storage facility. It's a business. It's not going to happen overnight. Like, this guy went under contract in 31 days, which is an anomaly. But the point of the story is, I asked him, I said, hey, Jeremy, are you willing to share this? Let me just interview them. I think it would inspire people, it would help people. And his response to me was, I'd be happy to do it if you allow me to give the glory to God. And it was such an inspiration, because I had been thinking about this for, I don't know, maybe 4, 5, 6 months. Like, I view myself as a steward. In other words, it's not my money. It's not my business. It's his business. And I remember my mentor, who I still work with to this day, he asked me about a year or so ago, he said, hey, Alex, do you ask God, do you bring him into decisions in your business? Do you view him as the CEO of your business or as your business partner? And I instinctively said yes. But when I got off that coaching call, I was like, that was BS. Like, I said yes, but do my actions reflect that? And I have been in a season where it hasn't been flowing like it once was, right? It's at times it's been a little bit more challenging. I've been met with more resistance in certain aspects of the business. And I know I'm doing good work and impacting people and helping people in this business. But am I viewing it as my business? And I think I have been. I haven't been, again, because I'm ready, fire, aim. If it's aligned with my goals, if it aligns with the vision, I jump, I take action. And I think what I've been hearing lately is, dude, slow down. Like, you might need to surrender and give up a few things versus chasing all these different things. Like, I'll give you marketing as an example. Too many marketing channels I'm involved in now versus focusing on one or two platforms and really doubling down, getting as good as possible on a few things. And so I've been feeling a little bit more scattered, feeling like I need to slow down. And as a result of that, I think what's been on my heart is, how do I bring God, how do I really make him the CEO? Where this is his business, where I'm using this business as a platform, not just for commerce, not just to make money, because it's a business that needs to make money, but also to share his message and to spread him. So that's been on my heart a lot lately. In all honesty, I got more questions than answers, but I have faith that it'll get figured out.
Yeah, I think the fact that you're thinking about it is going to help it get figured out, right? Because if you're not thinking about it, it's not going to happen. So being around people that are going to challenge that and help you kind of guide through that. As you were saying that, I thought to myself, man, like the same thing with this new business I just bought, right? So it's one of those things, you know, I need to thank God for every customer that walks through the front door, for every employee that comes to work, you know, that this is God's work, not mine. You know, has he given me some knowledge, skills, and abilities to be able to do some of this stuff? Yes, of course. But again, he's the one who gave it to me, right? I need to be a good steward of those skills, just as I am a good steward of the money. You know, be a good steward of, and I love the parable of the talents, because it's, you know, a talent is the form of money, but in our language, talent obviously means something else as well. So if we could think about it and be like, no, like we need to be using our talents in a way that is you know, bringing glory to God. So you know, good on your client for saying, hey, like, as long as I can give the glory to God, you know, and not to Alex, right? It's not Alex that made me do this. Yes, it's Alex who God put in my life to help teach me and guide me. And that'd be one of those things probably in your coaching, like, hey, you know, God has provided me with an amazing ability to run business, coach people, be a good mentor, and I want to steward that well by teaching you guys how to do this. Like, phenomenal job on your part to be able to say that and be able to build that up. So
thank you, man. And I think because what I would encourage people to do is, no matter what you do, if you're in whatever business you're in, or if you have a job or whatever, it's like, ask yourself, like, hey man, how can I show up as the best version of myself and share the message, or share something that has been, you said something that was so powerful, and I wholeheartedly agree with you. You said something about having a mentor and being a mentor. I've always viewed myself as a funnel. And what I mean by that is, like, when good information comes in, make sure that the funnel's wide enough on the other end where you're sharing it with as many people as possible. And whether that be your faith, whether it be anything you learn in business, it's so important that you have one hand up to somebody and one hand down, bringing them up. And I've been much more vocal and open about my faith on my podcast, on coaching calls. I just need to find the lane, and I don't know that I've figured that out yet. I've even thought, like, there's other storage coaches out there, people that teach people about the storage business. What if mine was a little bit niched more down, and what if it was a storage business for Christians? Not necessarily that you had to be a Christian to be a part of it, but so those are some of the thoughts and ideas I have, but just going more narrow and truly viewing it and operating it as if it's his business and I'm the partner. the cool thing about God is, we tithe. Tithing has been something that changes my life. And how cool is it to think that like God lets you keep 90%? He's just asking for a minimum of 10%.
Yeah.
Super powerful. I mean, that has changed my life. And so that's probably another conversation. But yeah, man, those are some of the things that have been really bouncing around in my head and have been placed on my heart as of late.
Do you know a guy named Eric Cabral?
I don't.
So he is I'm in a group called GoBundance. It's a group of entrepreneurs who men trying to build better lives for themselves across all platforms. But he's in there, and he recently readjusted his marketing, thinking the same thing. Like he recently kind of came back to Christ and to being a Christian, and he was like, man, I want to help. So he helps build marketing and do all of these different things. It helps different podcasts get launched and all this stuff, right? So, but he recently adjusted his thought process. Like, it's not only for Christians, but man, does he want to narrow in on really helping Christians build their brand. And he changed. It was like be your brand, but now it's like be your brand to glorify God. So how can we build our brands in there? So he might be a good connection for you, and I can try to make that happen.
I'd love to take you up on that if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course. But he was interviewed on the podcast as well. It came out a few weeks ago. So if you want to listen to him, you can check that out as well. But and anybody listening, of course, reach back and listen to him. But man, it has been fantastic chatting with you, Alex. I've really enjoyed this conversation, where it's kind of gone. Is there anything that you wanted to hit that maybe we haven't, or anything that's popped up in your brain that you wanted to go back to?
No, man, look, number one, I want to thank you again for your service, first and foremost. Number two, for the invitation to come onto your platform and just share with people. I'm hoping that you feel it's been a worthy conversation that can impact and have that ripple effect we talked about. Look, I think that the final thing I'll share with people listening and watching is give yourself some grace. Chances are you are doing the best you can, and understand that, to your point, Adam, we're going to fall short in certain areas. And we're going to fail, and we're going to mess up, make mistakes. And I think it's important that your children, if you're somebody listening to this, that you have children, that you want children in the future, share that with them. That, hey, I'm also broken. Like, I'm also messed up in some ways. But I think your heart and how you operate really means a lot. I think the motive you have behind something. And so give yourself some grace, because you might be going through a season of life or business where you're struggling. That could be financially, relationally, whatever the case might be. I'm hoping that our conversation, if you're somebody who maybe you had faith but you've lost it, maybe this gets you plugged back into that. Because for me, that's the source. When you go back to the well, you plug into the source, which is Jesus Christ, and things just tend to get a little better. And in many cases, a lot better. Yeah. And by the way, if you're somebody who doesn't share that faith, then leave that and take what resonates with you. But like with every podcast, I think speed of implementation is really important. Like, what one thought or idea or concept or framework can you take from this conversation and apply it to your current life, business, whatever you might be dealing with? If you could just take one little thing and then be conscious and aware moving forward of working on that, I think the compound effect 365 days from now can be massive.
Yeah. Completely agree. And I want to go back to you had said, have some grace in yourself. And I want everybody to imagine whatever your first job was, whatever your first, or even your current job, did you immediately know all of the things, or did somebody have to coach and teach you and guide you and learn how to do it? The same thing goes with anything else in life. You're going to get more tools from other people, having conversations, how to be a better father, how to be a better business owner, how to be a better husband. So be okay with taking those and going, man, I've never learned that before. I want to implement that. Have the humility to go, I know that's something I need to be able to do, and realize that, hey, nobody's taught you that yet. It's okay. Have grace in yourself and go, hey, nobody's taught me that yet, but somebody did now. So now I have a responsibility to implement it. Now I have to go, because if you taught your employee to do X, Y, or Z and they keep failing at it over and over again, it's time to fire that employee. So if you've learned something now and you're taking it, and Alex has taught you something, and you listen to it and go, that sounds like a great idea that I'm never going to do it. Okay, well, that's a problem with you then, right? Take the tool, do something with it, make a difference. And I will jump on, you said if you're not a Christian and you're something else, I'm going to say, hey, have a conversation with me, come to me, Christianity is the way to go. Following Christ is the way to go. If you're following something
Amen.
else, you're following a mistake. But I would love to have conversations with anybody who would be willing to do that and wants to do that. So, Alex, thank you so very much for jumping on. I greatly, greatly appreciate you spending some time here. I love what you're doing with your daughters and how you're raising them, and how you're running business, and your heart to follow where Christ is bringing you, and doing it side by side with your wife. So thank you for being a good inspiration for everybody listening. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you, everybody who is listening. I thank you. Without you guys, what would I be doing here other than stealing everybody else's good information, which I enjoy doing, but I want to give it to everybody else listening as well. So thank you for listening. Thank you, Alex, for jumping on. And as always, if you thought that there was some value in this, share it with somebody, which I know there was a ton of value. I've got probably 5 pages of notes, so I know that somebody else has got some as well. Share it with somebody that you think is going to get some help from it. Thank you, Alex. Thank you for everybody for listening, and we'll see everybody on the next show.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the BizDad Podcast. We hope you found some value in your time here with us, and we look forward to bringing you the next episode. If you've enjoyed today's show, please subscribe and share so you and your friends won't miss our upcoming episodes. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Rumble, where we continue these discussions and share more valuable content. Be the dad you know you need to be and run your business in a way you're proud to share with your kids. Keep crushing it.